Hey, it's Chad.
And Sarah.
And here are 5 things you didn't know about Heaven Hill Bottled & Bond.
And good for you if you did. Let's start off by reviewing the rules about Bottled & Bond. To be considered a Bottled & Bond, a spirit must meet these standards. It must be distilled at the same facility during one distilling season, stored for a minimum of 4 years in wooden containers in bonded government warehouses, bottled exactly at 100 proof, and reduced in proof using only pure water, and bear the real name of the distillery and the distillery's unique DSP number.
While you may have already known about the rules around Bottled & Bond, did you know that the Bottled & Bond Act was the first Consumer Protection Act? 9 years before the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906? On March 3, 1897, Congress passed the Bottled & Bond Act, put in place to protect consumers from misleading and potentially dangerous rectified liquor. A whiskey labeled Bottled & Bond meant that its quality was certified by the government, assuring customers on the standards of their spirits. Today, we celebrate Bottled & Bond as a stamp of quality, consistency, and transparency.
Now that we've covered some Bottled & Bond basics, let's talk about our featured bottle. Heaven Hill Distillery, the largest family-owned and operated distillery in the U.S., produces more Bottled & Bond spirits than any other American whiskey distiller. This includes labels like the mixologist's favorite, Rittenhouse Rye, the coveted Old Fitzgerald releases, and the newly invigorated Heaven Hill Bottled & Bond.
Heaven Hill Bottled & Bond serves as a tribute to the earliest days of the distillery's history. The Heaven Hill Distillery put its first whiskey into barrels in 1935, and 4 years later, the original Old Heaven Hill Bottled & Bond Bourbon was released, which speaks to their commitment to quality. Patiently waiting a minimum of 4 years to release the bourbon suggests that achieving their high standards and quality far outweighed the time and financial hurdles associated with producing Bottled & Bonds. Old Heaven Hill Bottled & Bond quickly became the #1 selling bourbon in the state of Kentucky.
Today you'll see a Heaven Hill Bottled & Bond that looks like this. Aged 7 years, this bottle takes it past the minimum of 4 years for a Bottled & Bond, right into what some distillers and enthusiasts call the sweet spot for bourbon, between 6 and 8 years. That extra time allows it to develop as a more complex and refined bourbon, with classic notes of caramel and vanilla accompanied by oak and subtle rye spice. While Heaven Hill Bottled & Bond is not yet available nationally, the plan is to make it so within the next year, so keep an eye out for this bottle.
You may already know how to read a bourbon label. We sure do after our lesson with Heaven Hill brand ambassador Bernie Lubbers. But the Heaven Hill Bottled & Bond label features a few special details. The line, "This bourbon is 7 years old," is a reference to the way that many of their historic labels declared age statements. The Heaven Hill Distillery seal is an emblem reserved only for releases that bear the name of Heaven Hill. The line, "The best of the great Kentucky bourbons," is a historic phrase that has appeared on many of Heaven Hill's bourbon labels throughout the years. The hand-sketched illustration on the label depicts the Heaven Hill Distillery in Bardstown, Kentucky, as it was in 1935.
Speaking of the original distillery, it remained operational from the time it was opened in 1935 until 1996, when a devastating fire destroyed most of the distillery and 7 rickhouses containing nearly 100,000 barrels of whiskey. In 1999, Heaven Hill moved their production to the Bernheim Distillery in Louisville, Kentucky, and has been distilling there since. But did you know that they just announced plans for a new distillery back in Bardstown, Kentucky? Construction on the Heaven Hill Springs Distillery began in 2022, and the distillery will be operational by the end of 2024. For Heaven Hill, this is a homecoming of sorts. Since 1935, they've called Bardstown home, but haven't distilled there since the original Old Heaven Hill Springs Distillery was lost to the fire in 1996. While they're returning to their roots in Bardstown, their Bernheim Distillery in Louisville, Kentucky won't be going anywhere and will continue to help them produce more of your favorite bottles.
You can learn more about this product, or any of the other Bottled & Bond spirits, by visiting the Heaven Hill Bourbon Experience in Bardstown, Kentucky, where you may even find a Heaven Hill Bottled & Bond in the gift shop. You can also sample this bottle, as well as many of their other expressions, at the new Five Brothers Bar. Be sure to check out their podcast, Tales from the Hill, where they discuss the heritage of the distillery and the future of American whiskey. As always, visit their website at heavenhilldistillery.com for more information on your favorite spirits.
Let us know which of these facts you found most interesting in the comments below, and please celebrate Bottled & Bond Month responsibly.
You can subscribe to our channel by clicking here on the screen, or join us over in another video. We hope to see you over there in one of those. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Chad.
Until next time, drink more Bottled & Bond bourbon.